What if I told you? Movies are technically not smooth. Yeah, that epic Marvel fight, that emotional close-up, even your favorite cinematic masterpiece, is just a sequence of slightly blurry still images playing at 24 frames per second. And here's the crazy part. We could make them smoother, way smoother. So why don't we? Why in 2026, with insanely powerful cameras and displays, are we still stuck using a standard from nearly 100 years ago? Let's break it down. First, quick basics. FPS stands for frames per second. Literally how many images are shown every second to create motion. 12 FPS. Choppy, like old animations, 24 frames per second. Cinematic, film-like, 60 frames per second. Super smooth, like gaming, 120 frames per second. Ultra smooth, almost too real. So naturally, you'd think higher frames per second means better experience, right? Well, not exactly. Let's go back to the early 1900s. Back then, films were silent and frame rates were all over the place, anywhere from 16 to 22 frames per second. Then sound came in, and suddenly things got serious. Audio needed a consistent speed to stay in sync with the visuals. Too slow or too fast, and everything breaks. After testing different options, filmmakers landed on 24 frames per second as the sweet spot. Why? It was the minimum speed needed for smooth motion. It kept film costs lower because film reels were expensive. And it worked reliably with sound systems. So basically, 24 frames per second wasn't chosen because it was perfect. It was chosen because it was good enough and affordable. And that decision stuck. Now here's where things get interesting. Over time, people got used to how 24 frames per second looks. And that look has a very specific feel. Slight motion blur, subtle stutter in fast movement, a bit of softness. And our brains started associating that with, this is a movie. It feels dreamy, emotional, larger than life. Now compare that to 60 frames per second. Everything looks hyper-sharp, extremely smooth, almost like real life, which sounds great until it doesn't, because suddenly it feels like you're watching a behind-the-scenes clip, a TV soap opera, or even a video game cutscene. This is called the soap opera effect, and a lot of people hate it. Let's talk real-world experiments. When The Hobbit was released at 48 frames per second, people expected it to be revolutionary. Instead, many viewers said it looked weird, too real. The sets looked fake, the makeup looked obvious, the illusion broke. Same thing with Ang Lee's films like Gemini Man at 120 frames per second. Technically impressive? Yes. Widely loved? Not really, because higher frames per second doesn't just make things smoother, it exposes everything. Here's a key detail most people don't realize. 24 frames per second works because of motion blur. Each frame isn't perfectly sharp. It blends slightly into the next one. That blur helps our brain connect frames smoothly. At higher FPS, less motion blur, more clarity, but also more video-like feeling. So, ironically, the imperfections of 24 FPS are exactly what make it feel cinematic. Now, it's not like 24 frames per second is the only option. There are exceptions. Sports broadcasts use 50 or 60 frames per second because clarity matters. Video games have higher frames per second because of better responsiveness. Some experimental films try higher frame rates. Even modern TVs try to fake higher FPS using motion smoothing. And most people immediately turn that off. Why? Because it ruins the cinematic feel. So why do movies still use 24 frames per second? It's not because we can't do better. It's because we don't want to. 24 frames per second has become a language of cinema. It tells your brain, this is a story, this is art, this is not real life. And sometimes, that slight disconnect from reality is exactly what makes movies magical. So next time you watch a film, remember, you're not seeing perfect motion. You're seeing a carefully crafted illusion, built on a standard from nearly a century ago. And somehow, it still works better than anything else. If you enjoyed this breakdown, stick around, because we're just getting started.